Good evening, and welcome to the Filmmaker interviews for the 23rd Annual Garden State Film Festival. My name is Mike Cassidy. I will be your host this evening, and tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing the director behind The Grief Counselor, Bishan Sen. Bishan, how's it going?
It's going great. Hello, my name is Bishan, and I'm the director for the Grief Counselor.
Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I know you probably have a busy schedule, so I really appreciate it. Could you just give the folks who are watching a little synopsis of your film and what to expect?
Okay. Yeah, so the Grief Counselor is a short film about a veteran with PTSD and essentially going through the low point of her life and dealing with the loss of her ex-husband and also unresolved trauma.
Yeah, that's great. What was the inspiration for this film? I feel like it tackles a lot of important issues that are currently going on in our world.
Sure. So, the as someone who has PTSD and also have struggled with mental health issues for a very long time, so that topic has always been common theme between in what I find interested in real life, but also in my film work. Um, I was actually at a film festival at Full Bloom Film Festival in North Carolina with another film called Almost a Jungle that was about a suicidal jingle writer going through loss as well and alcoholism. And I met Jason Keating, who is the writer for The Grief Counselor. And Jason um, he's a Marine vet, and essentially after he left the Marines, after in 2015, I believe, and he was in real estate, but he always wanted to write and create stories and never got around to it. And that was the first film festival that Jason had attended. So we talked about films a lot, and he's mentioned at that time that he was working on a script and if I would be able to look at it. And so that was that, and a few months later, he sent me a script that was about some of the building blocks of the grief counselor. It was about a veteran essentially dealing with substance use and also uh, unresolved trauma and the loss of a close friend um and just basically having a breaking point in life. It was an 11 page, actually, it was, I believe, an 8 page script. And when we started working on that, and as it happens with a lot of my stories, they become bigger and more, in some ways convoluted, but also more complex.
Sure.
And so that we ended up with a 25-page script.
Wow.
The at that time, uh, the Iraq War withdrawal was also fresh in my mind, and the loss of Nicole G. She was a veteran from North Carolina and one of the first, uh, no, not a veteran, but a Marine, and she was killed in the Kabul airport explosion.
Oh,
And so it was a remarkable story because 1 week before she passed away, she had on Instagram shared a picture with a infant, a refugee infant, and cradling that child in her arms and saying, "I love my job," and that became viral on Instagram. And a week later, in the suicide bombing, she was the one to pass away. Um, so I at that time at Consulate, I'm like, what if the protagonist is a woman uh, and dealing with the perspective of a female veteran dealing with PTSD and similar issues, and one of what we stumbled to, which became kind of the main focal line of the film, is somebody who wants to help people and is a therapist, uh, and her job essentially re-traumatizes her because it's dealing with the grief and trauma of other people while she has not dealt with it herself. And And yeah, so that became kind of the crux of the film.
Okay. Um, what was it like finding the cast for this film?
It was I mean, it was probably, I mean, casting is always my favorite
Okay.
part of the
Yeah.
filmmaking process. When I met, we didn't even have a script, and I was like, we got to find a good casting director. And so we talked to Jan Ingley, who's the casting director for my last film as well. And so we had, sent her the draft script, and um, our essential the first goal was to find the character of April, who was the protagonist. And so it was a long casting process, but it was when we saw Victoria auditioning, we knew that she's the one, and both Jason and me had that feeling because the initial idea was to do auditions in North Carolina and locally in Atlanta, and then to expand into New York and LA. But after seeing Victoria, we were like, we can, she is it, so we can stay with that, and the rest fell into place as well with Xander, who plays Ben, and Grant, who is actually a Marine vet as well, playing April's husband John.
Okay.
And it was for me it was in some ways a challenging process. My dad had passed away around that time,
I'm sorry to hear that.
and thank you. And also, so I hadn't talked to him for 10 years, but uh, and I believe it was like few days after my dad passed away that we had this Zoom casting session for the main role. It was a callback audition, and I hadn't told uh, anyone but Jason that I was dealing with that. So that was a way to escape my own grief as well, which came full circle after the film actually. But yeah.
Of course. Would you say that this project helped you heal at all while you were making it?
Well, yeah, that's tough to say. I mean, this project, I can say I lost half my hair doing it, but um, it's been challenging in a way because it's a short film, but it was it was ambitious from the get-go. We um, like with a budget of over $100,000 and for a short, so that was but still, like we had a crew from all over the country, and some of the people I really admire, including our uh, sound designer Tom, who was worked in Birdman and essentially is one of the top sound guys in terms of film mixing in the industry, and he was such an amazing guy. Actually, Tom shot Steven Soderbergh's Presence in Frankfurt, and he said that he loves that city, so he might be attending the festival because he lives in New York, so it's very close to him. But
Mm.
and he hasn't uh, seen the film in the theater himself, so he would be great to have. But yeah, in terms of healing, I mean, it opened up a lot of wounds as well, like just dealing with the character. Because I remember shooting in one of the days, almost every night I cried after filming. Uh, watching some of my biggest fears and traumas being, reenacted in screen and having going through with that, and that is obviously you know, a challenging experience, fulfilling experience, but also challenging. Uh, but yeah, it took me a a long time to recover from essentially the underlying personal issues. Also, just kind of the pressure of putting together film and finishing it, and
Of course, yeah. You mentioned before that you made another project called Almost Jungle. I thought you
almost a jingle.
Almost a Jingle. Sorry, I must have misread. What other works have you done in the past, and where can some of our viewers find those if they wanted to watch it aside from the film festival coming up?
Okay, so the grief counselor obviously has um, the one once its website. It's called the griefcounselorfilm.com. The film part is important because if you try the griefcounselor.com, there's a therapist in I think in
One guy, yeah.
she's a grief therapist, but so um, it's the film. Um, and almost a jingle,
Sorry, yeah.
jungle. Now I'm gonna say jungle. Almost a jingle, which actually was the name was almost a jingle because it was kind of self-parody of itself in some ways. So he's a jingle writer who's really terrible at that. So, but almost a jingle. Uh, it was available in Vimeo for a little bit, so I still have to work on that. I had my website. I'm working on that. I'm really terrible at my own websites. Uh, but yeah, so I'm working on my website. Let's just say
Okay,
that way.
under construction.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I've worked. Before that, I've made some other short films, worked in some documentaries. I've worked in some commercial work, and yeah, a little bit of everything basically.
Ooh. Why did you decide to submit to the Garden State Film Festival?
Well, because it's an awesome film festival.
Totally.
This will
Yeah.
be our East Coast premiere. We're
Awesome.
actually we just played at the Chandler Film Festival in Arizona.
Okay.
Then this month we're playing at the Dam Short Film Festival.
Okay. You're going the
Uh,
rounds then, yeah.
yeah, before that we played at Borrego Springs and also City of Angels Film Festival.
Nice.
Full Bloom in North Carolina because that's where the film was shot and where it all began in Raleigh. But so yeah, like out west and North Carolina, but this is kind of the first. And I'm in Philadelphia, so
Oh, okay.
not in Philadelphia, sorry, I'm in
Oh,
Pennsylvania,
okay.
1 hour from Philly, but I'm in Harrisburg.
All right.
Uh, but so this would be the East Coast
Definitely.
premiere, basically.
Do you have any advice for future filmmakers that might watch your film or even watch this interview?
Okay, I mean, my advice would just be basically follow your instincts. Directing or what like I've always like since I was in college, directing was something that I knew, okay, this is what I want to do. Obviously, I do a lot of editing and post-production is an interest, but it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And sometimes I find it hard to understand why somebody would want to do anything else. Like, why would you want to be a cinematographer? But I've worked with so many talented people who really know what they want to do and be good at. And I think that's important looking at yourself in the mirror, like, hey, if I had to do this for the rest of my life, and would I be able to do it first, and would I be really good at it? And just pursuing that, and it's a tough industry, um, but everything is achievable. That's what I believe, at least.
Absolutely. Thank you for that advice. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are at the end of our time together. Bishan, it was great meeting you and talking to you about this film. My last question for you before we go is will you be attending the festival with us this year?
So I intend to. I still am sorting out some details,
Sure.
but absolutely, I would love to attend.
All right. Well, can't wait to meet you in person. Again,
Yeah,
that is The Grief Counselor, Saturday, March 29th, block JS31 from 6:15 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Bishan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And
thank
can't wait
you.
to be at the festival.
Thank you, Mike. Have a wonderful rest of the day, okay?
You too.
And thanks for listening.
Of
Bye bye.
course.